coming home, survive and thrive in homeschooling. I've been meaning to do a podcast on art for homeschoolers. Today we went to the Renaissance Age of Genius exhibition, and it seems a good time to reflect on it as I explore some of the how, what, why and when of teaching art. I'll come back to the exhibition soon. I'm not a natural artist at all, but this did not mean our children couldn't learn art. The wonder and privilege of homeschooling is the huge pool of knowledge available outside you and me. One of our children went on to include art history in her degree and then spent a year in Florence. Wandering the galleries, churches and estates has been one of her best life experiences. Florence remains her favourite place she'd go back to in a snap. Our other 4 children have varying degrees of ongoing, genuine interest and knowledge in art. My husband and I are relieved and thrilled with the outcome of simply giving them the opportunities to learn, do, and visit. It's not hard to impart a lifelong love of art to your children, even if you've had little experience and value placed on it during your own childhood and education, like us. How to teach. Using basic materials, anyone can encourage art at home. If you're not naturally skilled in art, you'll need to bring in tutors, start a class for a group of homeschoolers, or seek a good online course if you can't do either of these. Keep materials on hand and make them easily accessible. You may wish to designate time for art as well as a casual activity. When the motivation is there for your children, take it. Include the reading of books in teaching art. You can use historical fiction, biographies, books of art through the ages, as well as books on individual artists. It's a good opportunity for you to rediscover your art skills or learn some more too. The wonder of art and its history was like a gift to me through our homeschooling. It did not feature too much in my life before this. What to teach? Working with pencils, crayons, watercolours and oils and other media. Have them copy a piece of great art. For example, Michelangelo's painting in the Sistine Chapel of God's finger reaching out to Adam. And teach art history too. Why did artists paint certain items in a picture, or painted the faces of well-known people at the time, or their sponsor in the scene? Why paint Mary in clothes of that era? And why is baby John, the cousin of Jesus, holding his fingers in a certain way? There are messages hidden in plain sight if you know what to look for. Learn the basic Roman and Greek gods, for they feature in much classical art. There is symbolism in art, including the use of colour and types of flowers. Also, to know how to recognize the basic saints in art. For example, John the Baptist holds a lamb. John the Evangelist may have an eagle close by, and St. Paul has a book and a sword. And then there's St. Bartholomew holding his skin over his arm. And why teach art? Art, creativity and beauty are as important as knowing your times tables and how to read. For the person of faith, understanding God's careful use of design and colour in His world is enough to justify the place of art in homeschool life. To have an appreciation of art and its history is to broaden one's understanding of what it is to be human. Art is not an optional extra or a luxury. It is vital for a balanced life. What we did in our homeschooling, we had plenty of the basic materials, as well as everyday budget materials for the younger children. We bought good pencils, paints and paper from art shops for the older children. This can demonstrate to you and your children that you take their learning and doing art seriously. Our children did lessons, painting, drawing, sculpture. Sometimes this was a series with an art teacher, and other times they joined in a class someone had organised. Our focus was on a few artists in depth and a lot of artists for familiarity. We studied Monet, Van Gogh, Da Vinci and John Constable for the former, and dipped our toes into many others for the general overview of art. When we could, we went to galleries and visiting exhibitions. Who and what is coming to town? I would buy leftover calendars at sale price, choosing famous art and artists. Taking out a page and pinning it to the art and notice board or on the fridge gives a familiarity of an artist. Change them over every couple of weeks. Use a series of one artist for a term, whilst you read and learn about him and copy some of the artwork. Doing this and learning about the symbolism, etc., is very close to doing an art history paper at university, minus the exam. And books, of course. Some which come to mind are Linear in Monet's Garden, Lust for Life, Van Gogh, The Agony and the Ecstasy, Michelangelo. And there are other types of art too: wood carving, fibercraft, and design. So back to the Renaissance, Age of Genius. If you are in Auckland, this is open until February. In other areas of New Zealand and overseas, keep a lookout for it. I highly recommend going with your older children, that is, from about 10 years old. It's not suitable for very young children. If you want to, you could do a preview of the artists and the pieces you will see, but it's not necessary. You do not need to explain anything during the show. Let your children absorb it as it is presented. Its purpose is not to teach them as a one-off, but as an addition to their art knowledge. Let the experience be just that, an experience. Encourage questions later and follow up with your knowledge, art books, biographies, or a quick search on the internet. It may be the springboard you're always watching out for to a deeper study. Going to an exhibition such as this is a great introduction to classic art, but is secondary to the real art. The images used were partial and included enlarged portions, which is ideal for seeing detail denied to you in the art gallery. Often you have a line on the floor you cannot cross, or risk the ire of staff yelling at you to stand back, or simply because you cannot get close enough because of other viewers. The day we went to the Louvre, we could hardly see the Mona Lisa because of the constant throng of people viewing it. Portions of a painting were placed on moving slides to make a novel piece of art and create interest. But this doesn't take the place of viewing the piece in its entirety in books or posters. And if you can visit the gallery where the original is, how lucky you are. Be aware of the perspectives of curators and authors as they are writing and presenting from their own worldview. For example, in today's Renaissance exhibition, we have the curator including the artist's devout Christian faith in one paragraph, and further down referring to his frescoes, convincing us of the truthfulness of his experiences. I think those two statements are an oxymoron, as our experiences, no matter how truthful we think they are, do not necessarily make them true. That's a modern progressive thought, not reflecting traditional Christianity. It illustrates how easily the interpretation of the curator or author can be seen as a telling of historical and biographical facts, when it may be more a result of the modern age we live in. Since we cannot go back in time to speak to the artist himself, we need to include a broad range of interpretations and books to get a sense of the message the artist is conveying and the life he lived influencing his work. A proverbial pinch of salt and a healthy, questioning attitude are helpful. What do you do with children who show an aptitude for art? Well, you take it seriously, of course. Give them access to mentors, materials, and any opportunity coming your way. Be sure they are well skilled in other educational subjects. He may want to become a famous artist or even be paid reasonably in a career, but unfortunately, it's a hard market to break into. Our modern world doesn't value the arts as they did in other eras. So the most talented artist needs to know how to make a living with a parallel career. Children who don't have an interest or a skill still need to know some basics about how to draw, recognize certain art, and be able to hold a conversation as an adult involving the subject. For older students, putting a portfolio together or for a discretionary entrance application to a university, strategic sculpting can constitute 2 or 3 lots of credits. For instance, creating a detailed Colosseum could be submitted for art history, and history, or a Globe Theatre for English, art, and history. Add sculpted figures, and with stop motion or video, you've also got media studies. The smart use of single projects done in great detail can go a long way. Coming up in the near future is an interview with a sculptor. The detail and level he can teach to even young children are impressive. I wish he was around when we were homeschooling. I'll be asking him how to teach with his skill with distance education. Using media such as Zoom or something else may be possible. You won't want to miss this interview, and your kids are going to love it. You may have noticed I have not singled out the when of teaching art, and that's because it's tucked inside this podcast all the way through. Sometimes you plan a session, other times it's impulsive, Classes are taught and exhibitions and galleries are visited. The when is any time you please. There will be listeners who are better artists than I, and I would value any input you can give. Use the comment area below if this is you. And I would appreciate it if you could pass this podcast around to other homeschooling families who will benefit from listening to content such as this. And don't forget our website, cominghomeinfo.com. I'll see you all next week.